G'day guys, Liam Fitzpatrick here. Welcome to another installment of my tackle hack series. In this hack we're going to cover spoons. How to rig the hooks on these bad boys. Trebles, assists, top, bottom. Going to cover all the different scenarios, the different ways you can rig them, and how to get the most out of your spoons. So what's a spoon? Okay, so a spoon is, in Australian bass lingo terms, these little slices, little hunk of metal. This one here is pretty much the one that kicked it all off 20 odd years ago. Your wobbler style spoon, big bait back, it was 20 years ago. Wivenhoe Dam kicked off, school bass, big bass, eating bony brim in schools, and guys started throwing what we used to call, or what is a twisty, or a hunk of metal, a chromie, at school bass, purely because of the bait they were feeding on, the way they'd sort of stage up and eat these schools of bonies out in the middle of the lakes. It was very similar to the way the pelagics, predate on bait fish, and the guys back then doing it found a way to catch them and caught them good using these old school spoons. Alright, this is the bait that kicked off the big resurgence in spoon fishing. Happened 3-4 years ago now. That's the Nori's Wasabi spoon. Now, Dean Thompson, we can thank him for this. He had a little stint in Japan, fished a few of the bass comps over there, and stumbled onto these bad boys and figured that's going to work on our fish. Brought a handful back with him, got them to a few of the pros that were fishing around at Somerset, and the boys whacked them on them. It was one of those new techniques. They were stunned at how easy that thing caught fish. They were throwing it out, it had that flutter action, and they just caught, they whacked them, and it kicked it all off again, basically. So once, the tournament anglers had these baits in their hands, it wasn't a one bait wonder that just caught fish. It wasn't like a Jackal TN60 when they come out and just anywhere you went, any dam you fished, anywhere you threw them, they caught. This bait's pretty specific to certain dams with a certain type of bait fish in them. So the bony brim dams, so your Somersets, your Wivenhoe, Caney now that they've got bonies, Barumba now that they've got bonies, Mulgra, any of your bony brim dams that are, you've got to treat them more like a pelagic fishery. Those bass relate to schools of fish. So they're out in the open, they're on flats, they're on creek beds, they're on drop-offs, they're hunting down bait fish that look similar to that. This bait comes into its own with its dying flutter. It's got this sideways natural sink. Now I covered the techniques, you can roll them, you can hop them, you can just, there's a heap of ways you can fish these guys, but that dying flutter, that dead bony, drifting down out of the school when the bass are in there feeding, is just dead set killer, and it's one of the keys to the success of this bait. So like I said, you've got a few different ways you can fish spoons. You can do high hops, rip the rod tip right up and get that nice dying flutter as that bait drifts back down through the school. You can just slow roll them and you'll get a sort of snaky wobble pendulum point from where the line is, and it'll just slow roll and slow wobble. Your other technique is you can burn and kill. So you can wind them fast, get the darting action out of the bait, and then same deal. Get that nice sink, that slow drift, that slow waft back down. Now I know I said that all these baits work well in those bony dams, the bony brim fisheries. Those dams still have fish relating to certain areas. So they're used to eating bony brim in those impoundments, but at times those bonies will be up in thick timber. They'll be open on creek beds with fallen timber. They'll be relating to an edge or a drop off where you're gonna have snags, you're gonna have things that are gonna foul your bait up. I'm gonna get into the hack now. So this is different ways to rig. Like as you can see on there, I've got a treble and I've got assist hooks on that bait. There's a couple of ways to rig these baits: trebles, no trebles, assists, treble plus assist, just assists, and they all suit certain applications and certain areas. So I'll start off with the old school one. Like I said, that's just a shore catch rook. This thing, I bought this back when I worked at Captain Bly's Tackle Mart back in like 05. It's a really light bait, it's only a 12 gram bait, but yeah, so if you were to buy one of those back in the day, that's how it'd come. Treble on the bum, split ring up the top, simple. Now that works a treat. Depending on where you are, like if you're gonna try and throw that around a snag area, well that treble's gonna want to foul up. So like I said, where you're gonna fish these baits is determined on different ways you can rig them. So that bait there with its treble is fine out in the open water, on the flats, fish are still gonna eat it. The next step from there is, because it's a natural falling sort of bait, what happens if the fish hits up this end? Well, it's not gonna get a hook. that's when we go and trick them out with little assist hooks. Now they're little ZX assist hooks off your EcoGear ZX blades. Now these guys are absolutely awesome. They do have a downside, they're rather weak. Now you can use that weakness to your advantage. I can straighten these hooks out on 8 pound. So 8 pound leader, you know, with a 10, 12 pound main line, you can straighten those little guys out. Which you go, well, that's terrible, I'm gonna lose fish. Not when you wanna fish your baits in heavily timbered areas. Yeah, so standard rear treble on your spoons. For that flutter down, go and add yourself some ZX assist hooks. Now, if that bait is drifting down like that and these are flailing in the air and this is flailing that way, if a fish comes at either end of your bait, you've got a better chance of putting some hooks in them. Even if the fish crunch this bait and get hooked on those rear trebles, we've had these assists pin them on the side of the face. So you end up with an extra set of hooks in them, which when it comes to comps and fishing, putting a few more hooks in them isn't a bad thing. But that sort of bait with all that added hardware is prone to foul up and snag up when you start fishing it around timber, around weed, around any sort of heavy structure. So your next option is to go to, so when we come to this guy and this rigging option. So that's just a twisty, one of those old school baits, but I'm just running the ZX assist hooks off the back there. Now, the ZX assist hooks are a weaker sort of hook, they're built for brim, really fine gauge. You can straighten them pretty easy, but that's the best part of this technique or this hooking system for when you're fishing it around timber. You can pull that bait through timber. The thing with it on that rear is it tends to come through the timber pretty clean every time. If it does foul up, a little bit of pressure, you can just arc one of those hooks out, straighten it back up, keeps you fishing longer. You're not busting whole leaders off, you're not having to retie, you're not losing baits. The more time your bait can stay in the water in the zone, better chance you've got of catching fish. So the ZX's just off the back end of that bait, through the timber, through the heavy structure, that's the way to fish them. Now, the opposite side of the ZX is you've got your trick bits from Atomic. Now you could use the trick bits, you could use any sort of light gauge, LL style, vertical jigging assist hooks. These guys all come with their little silicone skirts and stuff, so they're really cool. The thing with the Atomic trick bait is they're a heavier gauge hook. That's cool if you want to just run that rear assist system, but these guys aren't going to arc out as easy if you do foul them up on a bit of structure. So awesome system if you're going to just run that rear setup in open water. If you're going to run it around timber and structure, I'd be going to that little ZX assist. At least you know you can straighten that out, get your baits back. It will cost you fish at times if you go real hard on them. If you just play it nice and easy and gentle, easy does it kind of thing, you're going to work most of your fish out of there. If they wrap you up, gentle pressure, you can tend to get them back out. But you're not popping knots, you're not losing leaders, you're not losing baits. So that's the style I'd go for in that timber situation. Open water, if you're just going to run that rear setup, the trick baits or the trick bits or any of those sort of vertical jigging assist style hooks will do the job. So the last sort of style spoon we've got is just what is a vertical jig basically. So there's a heap of these out there. The Palm Slow Blat is the other big bait that everyone has. Nori's Wasabi, Palm Slow Blat. They're the main baits that most people tend to have. But I've had a heap of success just running these smaller vertical jigs, like micro jig, light jig sort of stuff. And that one, you can see that's rigged up exactly the way you'd rig, a heavy jig, just with those assist hooks up around the head. Now I find that works well when you actually want to vertically jig, get them down to the fish, and if they're in, shrubbery or some sort of, timbered bottom, or that way there, you're not going to snag up too much. The fish still like to profile, hit it head on. You don't have as many, hooks on there, so you're not going to hook up as easily if they're just sort of knocking it or bumping at it. But that's your other way of hooking those guys up, just running that standard off the top assist setup. Alright, that'd be about it. Rear treble, open water, works on the retrieve, on the sink, high hops, all that sort of stuff. You want to increase your hookup rate, you go to that added assist hook on the head of your lure. Now, that's just on a little split ring too, I didn't mention that earlier. We used to run snap clips up there, but I've seen fish tear those snap clip open, so it's a split ring now, assist on the top, treble there. That's your go-to open water bait, gives you maximum hookups. That's the one to use. If you're talking in the timber, round structure, I prefer the ZX Assist. Yes, it opens up. It's a weaker hook out of what's out there. But like I said, it's in your favor. If you don't go crazy, that's going to get you through the timber, keep your lure on the end of your line, and eventually it's going to get you more fish, more hookups. Yeah, that's the way to do it. And your last one, lucky last, just a standard vertical jig assist style. Off the head of your lure, again, on a little split ring, straight up and down, awesome for in and out of heavy cover, like I said, old shrubs down deep, timber, log piles, that sort of thing. Alright, that's it. That's 4 different ways I rig my spoons. You've got everything covered there. There's other ways to do it probably. There's probably heaps of stuff I haven't even done or seen yet, you know, or covered. So, you know, that's just how I fish them, where I fish them, and yeah, what's worked for me in the past. So, there's my spoon hack. You know, if you enjoyed that, and you haven't subscribed yet, you know, give us a subscribe. If you want to know something, any more questions, hit us up in the comments below. And if you liked it, give us one of those. Alright guys, thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time. Cheers.